Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Thursday, September 19th, 2019. Let's take a look at our space weather really quick before we head into tonight's show. Taking a look at our solar wind, we are sitting at 368.2 kilometers per second with a density of 3.7. Our sun is blank once again, now 16 days straight without sunspots. $185 days without sunspots in 2019, and it definitely looks as if we are soaring past last year's number of 221. Our TSI is coming in at 4.20. KPNC is at a 1, and the 24-hour max is sitting at a 3. Let's look at the SDO in motion, and there is that coronal hole that is about Earth facing. And we should see the effects from this coronal hole on September 23rd. That's on a Monday. At this time, we're not sure what kind of, if we will touch any kind of geomagnetic storms. But another focus that we have as well is over at across the eastern limb. I'll show you that real quick. So on the eastern limb, we have a coronal hole that is forming above the equator region of the sun. And if this continues to develop the way it is, we probably will have some geomagnetic storms from that coronal hole. Again, that's still beyond the eastern limb, but it is approaching quickly. So we will also keep our eyes on that, as that should be Earth facing probably within the next 3 to 5 days. Our TSI on September 11th, 2019 came in at a 1360.635. And going back to the SDO, yesterday, the 17th and the 18th, we had a minor effect from the southern coronal hole that was just barely grazing our magnetic field. Now, last night, overnight, we had 3 strong earthquakes in Indonesia. 5.7, a 6.1, and a 6.2, I believe. And somebody said we didn't have any coronal holes or sunspots to trigger those. But even as we were exiting out of the solar stream, that is still likely the reason why we saw these strong and very deep earthquakes as well. So we'll keep our eyes out there as far as the energy moving towards the west coast, like always. But seismicity is definitely going to be up here over the next several days, as we are going to be dealing with this coronal hole coming up soon, and then one on the eastern limb that is just now arriving and turning towards Earth. That one's a lot bigger than the one that's coming up. So definitely something to watch here in the near future. Let's go over to the grandsolarminimum.com. Today we are seeing frost and Mount Hood update as well. Now, we talked about Mount Hood a couple nights ago, and Mari brought up an excellent point about how environmentalists are preventing scientists from monitoring Mount Hood, and that's one of the volcanoes we need to be looking at. But I'll get more into that here in a little bit. Let's get started over at the grandsolarminimum.com. And actually, we'll go ahead and start with the actual story at the USGS. So Mari and I reported last week, I believe, that the USGS was actually sharing this on their Twitter, that scientists should be concerned and we should be monitoring Mount Hood. When you have scientists from the USGS posting tweets about this, it's something you should consider. And apparently those suggestions were heard. During the week of September 23rd, the U.S. Geological Survey Cascades Volcano Observatory, in cooperation with the U.S. Forest Service and Mount Hood National Forest, will install 3 new volcano monitoring stations on the flanks of Mount Hood. These stations will substantially improve the ability of the CBO scientists and their partners to detect and provide warning of any changes in activity, earthquake activity. It says here, ground deformation or volcanic gas emissions that may signal an increase in volcanic activity and a subsequent danger to people and property. Mount Hood has repeatedly, for hundreds of thousands of years, erupted. And the most recent, guess when? Dalton Minimum, 1781 to 1793. So this is a very, to me, another one of those read between the lines. And what I mean by that is they're pointing out the last time this thing erupted was during a grand solar minimum, in the middle one. And now here we are entering a grand solar minimum, and scientists are now going to be able to monitor this volcano. And honestly, last week's message was loud and clear because they're putting in a system, 2 weeks after we said we should be watching this volcano? A week. That should be a pretty big indication, folks, that there are scientists that believe that low solar activity, corona hole, solar winds, solar minimums do have a correlation with volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. The new Mount Hood monitoring sites will consist of 3 sets of co-located seismic and GPS stations situated within 2.5 miles of the summit. One ground-based continuous volcanic gas monitoring station will be installed at a later date. The stations will be constructed with minimal impact on the environment. That's important. They will be located away from trails and painted to blend in with the surroundings. A helicopter will be used to deliver the equipment via external sling load to the site during construction, and USGS personnel will access the sites by foot. The installation work is not expected to affect other recreational uses of Mount Hood National Forest. So this is good news. This was what was needed. And again, this has everything to do with the USGS influence. Again, this is not a coincidence that last week we reported that this is a volcano we need to be watching. USGS was tweeting out the same article. And then a week later, here we go. We have results. Does it mean it's going to go off soon? No. That's not what that means. But scientists, I think, believe that there is a correlation with grand solar minimum and this volcano. And I'm sure if they went back, looked further, they'd probably see more eruptions. And I'm sure we can break out the facts about Mount Hood at a later date. All right, let's move on. Severe weather forces local pumpkin patch to close. This is kind of a sad story, honestly. And the reason why I say it's sad is because this is one of those local farmers, these small farmers, who rely on such things to help with supplemental income. After about 20 years of planting in the Gibbon area, one of the local farmers said that this is one of his worst years. Now it's having an impact on the community. He messaged out on Facebook, unfortunately, due to the flooding on our farm grounds we experienced this year, we're unable to plant our pumpkins and will not be able to open for the 2019 patch season. There's nothing here to see but some black dirt out there where the pumpkins would have been. This year's severe weather is still impacting local farmers. This year was tough, a winter with all the snow, then all the rain in the spring, and we continued since all the way through till now, he says. We've had a tough time getting crops and eventually never even got pumpkins planted this year. Now, it's only a 10-acre patch, but still, they count on this money to help pay bills. Everybody that's called so far to set up a tour said they've been really disappointed, and it's kind of been an eye-opener for them also. One farm, both the family and their goats are missing the annual visitors. We sure miss everybody not seeing them this fall, the farmer says. All the kids, smiling faces, the people that come out, that's what we'll miss the most. We're already missing that now, just talking to people and that part of it. And some of our businesses and stores that take our pumpkins, they've had to go elsewhere. So it's been a change. And I think there's some sincerity when this farmer says that they miss the most the smiling faces of the children, the people. I mean, think about it. We do this for 20 years. This is an exciting time of the year. Halloween, a lot of people celebrate Halloween. Okay, it happens. All right, then we go into Thanksgiving and then Christmas. And this is all about the kids anyway. If you have children, you know what I mean. This is a fun time for you and your family to go to the pumpkin patch, pick out your pumpkin. A lot of families do this. Just like going on hay rides and stuff. So it's kind of, I don't know how many pumpkin patches are suffering this all over the country, but just reading this one story is it's odd. It's different. These farmers aren't used to this. They have pumpkins in their patch. Now this year they can't open. How bad the weather was this year. Not only will they be missing out on the revenue they could be bringing in, but also this is a time of year where the community gets to know their local farmer as they have gotten to know them over the years by doing business with these customers. So this is kind of like a tradition that's being broken, unfortunately, by Mother Nature herself. We'll leave the link on the website. And Goldstein, Feds scrapped 100 years of data on climate change. There's something else I want to show you too. This is on What's Up With That. Canadians already suspicious of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's carbon tax are likely to be more suspicious, given a report by Ottawa-based Blakelock's reporter. The Environment Canada omitted a century's worth of observed weather data in its developing computer models on the impacts of climate change. The scrapping of all observed weather data from 1850 to 1949 was necessarily, a spokesman for the Environment Canada told Blakelock's reporter, after researchers concluded that historically there weren't enough weather stations to create a reliable data set for that 100-year period. Well, no, you're right, but that's when we don't rely on instruments like that. Now it's ground sediments, tree rings, stuff of that nature. The historical data is not observed in historical data, the spokesman said. It is modeled historical data. 24 models from historical simulations spanning from 1950 to 2005 were used. The computer simulations are part of a federal government's climate data website launched by the Environment Minister, Catherine McKenna. That was on August 15th. She described it as an important next step in giving our decision makers even greater access to important climate data for the long-term planning. The more each of us use this type of information, the more it will help. They don't hold back. Blakelock Reporter, which describes itself as the only reporter-owned and operated newsroom in Ottawa, focusing on intensive reporting of government documents, notes in that in many cases, the observed temperatures scrapped by the Environment Canada in creating its computer models were higher in the past than today. For example, Vancouver had a higher record temperature in 1910 at 30.6 than it did in 2017, which was reported, the hottest on record, of course. 29.5 degrees Celsius. So 1.1 degrees Celsius warmer in 1910 than it was in 2017. Toronto had a warm summer in 1852, 32.2 degrees Celsius. 2017 was deemed the warmest though, and that was only at 31.7. The highest temperature in Moncton was in 2017 was 4 degrees cooler than it was in 1906. 4 degrees cooler, guys. So again, the convenient truth is hidden because we got to convince these folks that they're causing climate change from 1949 to 2005. We're causing it. That's what they want you to believe. But in all actuality, in 1852, it was warmer than it was in 2017. Now, last I checked, we didn't have the air conditioner. We didn't have refrigerators. We didn't have Hummers or Blazers or Tahoes or Suburbans or, Ford Rangers or nothing like that. But yet it still got pretty warm. Temperatures, all-time records, were higher than what they are claiming for 2017. So when your government tells you that your temperatures for 2017 were the hottest on record, but in actuality, record doesn't go back far enough, well, you do have data sets, but according to who isn't unreliable. And that's where you start saying, well, that's where the science is getting rejected. You don't trust the work of a scientist, but you trust the work of a machine that takes a measurement that's created by man. And we are known to make errors. I'm just saying. Again, science is about testing something over and over and over again. You want to find different results each time. Once you start finding the same answer over and over again, you have a pretty good grasp on what science you're looking at. I'll leave the link in our website. I thought there was something else about Canada. Maybe I'll skip to this one real quick. It's funny because where's Canada at on this list? These are the people that believe. This is an interesting chart. So the really dark purple is climate change that is mainly by humans. All right. And the lighter purple is climate changing and human activity is partly responsible. And then the teal green is where people believe that there's no role at all from humans. And then there's actually the climate is not changing at all. And shocking, the USA, because we're a bunch of wise asses, I guess. But 6% believe that the climate's not changing at all. And I guess if you want to go back and look at overall records from the past 100, 200, 300 years, I guess you could say the trend is it isn't changing. But nevertheless, this headline reads that only 36% of the USA believes that humans are mainly responsible. And I think that title is a little misleading because there's another 37% that believe that humans are partly responsible for it. And check this out, and this is probably the biggest of all the countries out there. 9% of USA citizens believe that humans don't play a role at all. My guess that 9% is probably the folks that are watching this channel right now. So we still have a long way to go as far as getting the message out about climate change, about grand solar minimum, about how this is natural and it happens in cycles. But I think this is a good beginning. We're starting to see signs that there are people budging on this decision. Whether or not to believe Al Gore or believe all these scientists that are coming up with this new research and new peer-reviewed papers. Sure, it's easy to rely on the old data. It's easy to rely on celebrities and politicians that are idled by many. It's a lot more work to do it yourself, to look at all the data, to go back in history and look. It's a lot of work. The average person doesn't have time for that. So what's easiest is just listen to mainstream media, what they say and what they put in the papers. Well, it's got to be true, right? It's on TV, it's in the newspapers, it's on the internet. The thing that upsets me the most about people who are confused about climate change is that they're not willing to look at the raw data. They're not willing to look at the new proof, the new work that's being done to prove otherwise, that man is not causing climate change, that the sun is causing climate change, and we're not warming anymore. Obviously, we are beginning to cool. Climate protester thieves, they get a free pass. Oh yeah, because they fit the Paris Treaty agenda. Dr. Willie Soon, thieves who stole a portrait of the French President Emmanuel Macron were exonerated because the judge accepted their argument that President of France is not doing enough to combat climate change. So that means it's legal to do crime in France, I guess, because the President of France is not doing enough to battle climate change. How is this legit? Paris came up with the climate treaty that sets the standards of CO2 emissions all over the world. 7 to 9 countries aren't signing it anymore out of the 190 that did sign it. And these clowns that stole a portrait of the president is getting off the hook because the judge agrees that the president's not doing enough to battle climate change. He set the standard of a garbage policy. I just don't get it. I mean, this guy, his country created this treaty, or it's the birthplace of it. Yeah, this guy finds it entertaining that the great climate leader is being criticized for lack of action. But there may be more serious consequences. This court case sends a clear message to French criminals. If they want to rob French bank and be exonerated, they should pick a bank with strong connections to the fossil fuel industry so they can argue the crime was a symbolic political gesture. That's actually well said. I was thinking the same thing. I just didn't word it the way he did. But that's true. Hey, if a judge is willing to accept a plea that their president isn't doing enough and their president basically is the leader of this climate stuff, I mean, yeah, I guess that's what you have to do, right? Go after a bank that has ties to fossil fuels, and then when you get caught, you just tell the judge, hey, listen, they're killing our planet. We took that money so we can give it to the people who are dying. You know, they're playing Robin Hood, right? I don't think so. Interesting stuff out there in the news today, guys, I tell you. Imelda continues to dump heavy rain. I got some updated information I want to go over versus what I was going to show you guys. So I've heard some people talk about Imelda being pretty bad. Right now, it's dumped prolific rainfall over parts of eastern Texas overnight. More than 40 inches has fallen in some spots since Monday. This has triggered major flash flooding east and north of Houston. Heavy rain may continue into parts of eastern Texas and western Louisiana, and some of the same areas that were hit hard by Harvey in 2017 have experienced major flooding once again from Imelda. Now, I showed a graphic from this morning. Thanks to Thor News, that's where I found it, was on his Twitter feed. But that's gotten worse. Some areas have received a total of 43 inches of rainfall. This is what's still left to fall in eastern Texas, western Louisiana, less than an inch, thank God. There was a stat that I wanted to show you guys real quick. There have been 2 deaths. Is that I-10? I'm not sure which highway this is. This picture was taken at College and Martin Luther King Drive. This flooding is devastating in Beaumont. That's pretty high, fellas and ladies. That water is going all the way to the top of those traffic lights. What are those, 10, 15, 20 feet high in the air? So, I'm talking about Tropical Storm Lorena now. Sheesh. But that's in the Baja area, so that's not going to affect us. Locally, 43 plus inches of rain. So, where does that stack up with Harvey? Harvey came in, there was 60.58 inches of rain in 2017. So this storm is a top fiver, but it's not done yet. And that's what the asterisk is for. Amelia, 1978, 48 inches of rain. Easy with 45.2 inches of rain. And Claudette, 1979, 45 inches of rain. And Imelda, 41.81 inches of rain. Now, what's relevant about these numbers? 2017 and 2019, those storms were in a minimum. Amelia and Claudette also were in a minimum. I'll have to do some research about what was going on in 1950. So 4 of these storms we can confirm a solar minimum during the period of these storms. Here's where I'm going to rant. How many times have I shown things like this and correlated it with weather events that happen during solar minimum? And here's another example. This has nothing to do with man's emissions to CO2. I mean, 1950, we were clearly not at 409 parts per million CO2. Not even in 1978 were we at 400. Heck, we were barely in the 300s. So obviously this has nothing to do with CO2. In fact, 1978, there was more rain that fell than there did today in 2019. And again, if CO2 was part of climate change, then that number would be a lot lower. But the reason why these numbers are high is because these events happen during solar minimum. Weakened magnetic field, allowing more cosmic radiation to enter our atmosphere, seeding our clouds, creating cloud nucleation, reflecting TSI back into space, and also creating more precipitation with these storms. Highly charged particles, think of them as a magnet for water drops, for water vapor. And they just attract so many particles to the drop. I can't tell you how many times I've went outside during a rainstorm and these raindrops are massive, size of marbles, if not bigger, super wet. And that's because of all the highly charged particles in the atmosphere. But again, I'm not going to sit here and lecture for too long on this. But again, I point out another correlation. Once again, a heavy rainfall event correlated with solar minimum for reasons that I just listed about Earth's magnetic field and such. It's not a coincidence, folks. This happens every solar minimum. Here is Thor's pictures. Thank you, Thor. Yes, folks, we woke up to frost up here in Maine. Upstate New York also woke up to some frost. I'll tell you, the temperature said 32 degrees Fahrenheit this morning. We were expecting temperatures to dip in the mid-30s for sure, but 32 was quite a surprise this early in the year as well. Summer snow, yes, Lake Tahoe gets an early blast of snow. This is probably what, our fifth early snow storm that we've talked about, at least. They want me to save money, folks. I thank you for that, Los Angeles Times. Anyway, there are still 6 days left of summer, but that didn't stop the light snow from falling. Now, this was from September 17th. Monday, Lake Tahoe area, Squaw Valley, and Mount Rose ski resorts reported a dusting at high elevations, and more snow may be on the way. Oh, yeah. Caltrans warned drivers around Donner Pass and Interstate 80 to slow down for weather conditions because of the season's first snowfall. Look at that. Yeesh. Not sure if I'm ready to see that on September 16th. The National Weather Service has predicted as much as 3 inches of snow for the greater Lake Tahoe area at elevations above 7,500 feet through Monday evening. This was earlier this week. And the next chance of snow will be last night, actually, at very high elevations. I know it's old, but again, we're talking about summer snow. Middle of September. A little early. Some areas maybe not, but I feel like we're getting colder weather and snow stories earlier every year that we've been on this channel since 2016. So, not a coincidence once again. Take a look at our current weather right now. Most of the action is in the south, Texas, Louisiana, Imelda, and then there's some severe thunderstorms moving through the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas, affecting some areas in central Kansas, more western Kansas right now, but should affect central Kansas overnight as rain and showers continue to come in from the Gulf for Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, and of course Texas. And hopefully this storm is starting to wind down, but like I said, some areas already looking at a local 43 inches or more of rain from this storm. And let's take a look and see if we have any changes in our GFS report. We try to show you guys this forecast. Sometimes it gives us a good indication of hurricanes. We've seen quite a few show up and disappear. But high pressure seems to be the savior of this. If it wasn't for the high pressure sitting off of the East Coast, driving these storms away from the United States. There's Jerry in your far right. And we're on Wednesday, September 25th, starting to see some snow in Alberta and BC once again. Rain across the central part of the United States into the Midwest. Snow creeping in at the end of this month, September 27th, 28th. Not as heavy as it first indicated a couple of nights ago during our live show. And here we are on the 29th. Heavier rain across the northern plains, though, in that Canadian border. As we look at our weather going into October 1st, and it's going to be an active pattern starting in October. As you can see, more rain and snow starting to mix in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and more snow coming into the northwest of the United States by October 3rd. Hey, Mari.
Yeah, Jake?
How would you like some snow showers on October 3rd, Thursday, 2019?
Shut the front door, Jake.
So, Mari and I live in upstate New York, and this is new. This low pressure system should bring cold enough air with it to produce light snow showers October 3rd. Oh yeah, this has everything. Now it's going to be overnight snow. It's not going to be like accumulating. This is going to be a light dusting. But the fact that we have snowflakes flying in October 3rd. I'm going to make my prediction right now, folks. If you live in the Northeast or the Northwest, I guarantee you we will have some accumulating snow on the ground for trick or treat. Now I know why Weather Channel was watching that storm in the Bajas. Right now, GFS has got that thing making landfall in Mexico and moving through New Mexico without really... The majority of this is going to be in Mexico as far as that storm is concerned. But the story of tonight is the cold that's going to be happening in the Northeast. Interesting enough that we've seen a couple changes in this GFS forecast. Let's take a look at our temperatures, because I know we've had some hot weather to talk about through the end of this month. And I want to see if this, obviously we got some colder air coming. Let's go ahead and take a look at some temperatures real quick before we head off the air. All right, that's not what I wanted. Thank you anyway. So here we are this Friday, tomorrow, during all the climate change striking. Let's hope the weather is bad for the people that are out striking climate change. Now, this will be funny. I hope there's a bunch of climate change rallies in Oregon and Washington and Nevada and Utah and Idaho and parts of Wyoming. Heck, I wouldn't even mind one in Arkansas where it's going to be 67 degrees. That'll be awesome. Temperatures going into this weekend are going to be very fair across the Midwest and the East Coast into the Northeast. This is good weather for September 21st. And as we go into Sunday, 80s once again. Is this the last of the 80s for the Northeast and the Midwest? And we go into next week early, September 23rd on a Monday. Also, we will have some solar wind to deal with as well. So it'll be interesting to see how this correlates. Look at that. Sharp contrast in temperatures from Sunday to Monday in upstate New York and Pennsylvania and West Virginia. Across the Central Plains, 70s and 80s. And as we get closer to the end of September, those temperatures across the Central Plains going down from the 80s into the 70s. Most of the heat is going to stay in the Deep South, which that's pretty typical. I know we did have some 100-degree temperature readings in the Southeast today. Again, it happens. Let's take a look as we move further into late next week. This is midweek next week. Again, temperatures 70s and 60s for most of the United States, 80s and 90s in the Deep South and the West Coast. And as we get closer to October, we see that cold air being pushed in from the northern Arctic regions into Canada, and finally into the lower 48 by September 27th overnight. And look at the daytime highs, September 28th. All that heat is being forced into the south. 57 degrees September 28th for the high in the capital region of New York. 40s in Washington and Oregon. And then we get to Sunday, September 29th. Still freezing temperatures on the way. The Northwest is definitely going to get the beginning of the cold blast is going to start in the Northwest, obviously. But here's where that change comes in for the beginning of October. That sharp contrast of high-low temperatures. Look at that. Colder air spills into the United States, keeping that heat to the south, staying very cool in the Northeast and the Midwest by October 3rd. And this is where that snow shower activity could be possible right here on October 3rd. Overnight, briefly, nothing major. But again, some spots are going to dip down to freezing on October 4th as well in the Northeast, parts of West Virginia, Wisconsin, and of course, spots in the Northwest and in the Sierra Nevada mountains. So, wow. Again, this is quite a bit out, but definitely fall-like weather. 40s and 50s across the majority of the United States, especially across the Northern Plains, Northwest, Northeast, and the Great Lakes. We'll see highs in the 40s and 50s by early October. So, again, I'm going to call it. Let me move this up. Sorry, folks, for you that want to see that in the South. I'll play that again. I'll go ahead and go on a limb. I'll say it now. Snow in the Northeast on the ground by Halloween. Saving the Northwest. But the majority of this heat right now, if you live in the Deep South in Florida, enjoy. Some of us are going to be envy of that. I think some of the blue is showing up a little too early for my liking, if you want my honest opinion. But we knew this was coming. We've read about it in the Southern Hemisphere, how the cold air arrived 2 months before winter was supposed to even be here. Freezing temperatures that you would normally get in December, possibly in the middle of October. How cold is it going to get this December and January? These are all legit questions that hopefully we'll have more of an answer for you as the season goes on. Mari, did you want to come over here and say hello to everybody?
Hopefully as the season goes on, we'll know. He'll be here for it,
well,
Jake.
You never know.
Big giant asteroid might go some right, Jake.
Asteroid.
I'm just being a wise ass.
Right.
You know what? I don't think anyone heard your broadcast because they're too busy talking about pie. And now they started talking about cheesecake. And thanks to Matt, he's all about
I love cheesecake.
Chocolate chip pancakes this. And, you know, it's like our viewers have a big case of the munchies. And now it's like I'm trying to find pie delivery service because our viewers just listed every single kind of pie out there. And it's like, I want pie now, Jake. Anyway, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I love the community we have here, and everyone in the chat. You're just unique individuals with great personalities, and having these long, all-day live chats the way we do, I'm starting to get to know some of you personally, and it makes everything that much more enjoyable. You guys are awesome.
Absolutely.
Todd Hathaway, thank you for the super chat. He says post the most recent scientific articles on GSM. He's getting resistance in DC from people he knows, so time to fight back. We have quite a few articles on our website. I probably could do a better job on our website, sort of putting them in a centralized area for people to find. So I'll work on getting the most recent articles and even some of the older, more relevant articles together in just one single post on our website, and I'll post it in the scientific research section on our website. And when I do that, I will make sure Jake shows that. I don't know if I'll be able to get to it this by the end of this week, but definitely by next week I can do that. So I was telling people what I was wearing to try to get them off the damn food talk, Jake. I'm wearing a big, giant comfy.
Basically.
I didn't tell them what you were wearing, though.
Yeah,
I won't either.
I bet you didn't. I bet you didn't.
You want me to? I haven't, but now it's like,
No.
I feel like I should.
No.
What did I just knock over?
Not sure. I appreciate you folks actually putting up with me tonight. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, so...
They do know about your sneeze attack and why we were a few minutes late.
Yeah, I do apologize for that, guys.
Yeah, it's something's going around, and it's not just in this household. Other people in the chat are saying there's a lot of fall, spells.
A lot of folks, yeah.
Change of seasons does that.
Well, thank you very much, Mari, for that report, and we really appreciate the participation.
Everybody go out and get some pie.
Get some pie, folks. But we really do appreciate your participation in the chat and the interaction that we get with you guys in the comment section. We're seeing the Patreon channel starting to grow. Again, $1 gets you into the Patreon. Also, you will receive the phone number for the call-in show that we have on Saturday nights at 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. for our Patreon listeners only. That is exclusive. We will eventually get to uploading some of these live shows just so you folks can get an idea how they flow. But we anticipate a few more callers this week than last week just because of the increase of membership. So remember, folks, it only takes $1 to join our Patreon channel. Visit there when you can to check it out. Also, check us out. We're everywhere. Facebook, Twitter,
Who's gonna be the first to
BitChute.
buy the AOC shirt? That's the question.
We'll have a contest on who is the first to buy the AOC shirt. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight. Thank you for tuning in once again to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Tentatively, I'd like to say we're going to have a show tomorrow night at 9 p.m., but I'm going to say health permitting. We will have a show tomorrow night, 9 p.m., but we will have the call-in show no matter what. I'll be hopped up on all kinds of cold medicine for that. So, if anything, we'll see you guys in the morning for our solar update. Until then, we will talk soon. Have a good night, guys.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.